What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to a team report / analysis of the team I used to get top 4 in the Players' Cup 4 North American regional qualifiers. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm doing this unscripted. I do have some notes, but hopefully I won't keep on rambling too much. I think one of the things that might help you understand my perspective for this tournament was my previous tournament results, very recently at the very least. So they were just horrible. In Players' Cup 3, I had practiced really hard, thought I had a really good team, and then I loaded up into the tournament and went 0-2 against 2 teams that I thought I had a good matchup against. And I just felt terrible after this. I also played in what I considered to be the most important Series 9 tournament prior to Players' Cup 4, and that was the Smogon VGC Major. This was an open entry, free to enter, lots of cash prizes tournament. And a lot of top players enter. This was, like I said, a very important tournament. I went 2-3 in this tournament, but my 2 wins were activity wins from my opponents not showing up on time. So I really just went 0-3, but it took me longer. So my goal for Players' Cup 4 was a very, very modest goal of winning a single game. I hope that sounds ridiculous to you, because what kind of tournament do you go into with that being your goal, to win a single game, and then anything beyond that is just, like gravy on top? But again, the last 2 tournaments I entered, I hadn't won a single game, and so I just wasn't playing well up to this point. So I wanted to win a single game. That meant I didn't want to go 0-3 and then win a game. I wanted to win an actual tournament game in a relevant set. From there, who knows what would happen, but I wanted to win at least that one tournament game. So I was practicing very hard for that sort of goal in mind. You'd think that with that, you're just like, oh, I just want to win a single game, so you don't practice too hard for that. But it was kind of the opposite for me. It actually kind of bolstered my practice, because instead of having a lot of pressure for being like, I must qualify, I really want to qualify, I'm going to try to qualify, this is the best team I think that can qualify. Instead, I had a much more relaxed approach to things, and I think that helped me focus a lot in practice and understand things a little bit more objectively rather than tunnel visioning on certain stuff. So I lidered with this account, Twitter Sucks, and I think I hit about top 100 or so. I don't know what I peaked at in before the actual tournament took place. But I was laddering with a number of different teams, some of which you see on your screen. So one of the most, the first team that caught my eye after the Smogon VGC Major was this team that was used by both Marco Fierro and Dynamoon. This team with Thundurus, Landorus, it's a sort of control-based team. So you use your Thundurus, Landorus, and Incineroar to control damage. You put a lot of stat drops on your opponent, especially on your opponent's Dynamax. And then your own Landorus is able to come in later and set up for free, being able to do Swords Dance, and then you can max flying through stuff. It also had Tapu Fini, which I really liked. I thought Tapu Fini was one of the best Pokemon in Series 9, so Tapu Fini very much appealed to me, and I thought that the combination of Landorus's max flying plus Tapu Fini was very strong. You could use Landorus to beat Rillaboom, that would check it, things of that nature. I thought these two were a very strong combination, and combining it with a bunch of stat drop stuff seemed like it'd be a really strong strategy. I don't like Kartana too much, or Urshifu, but they ended up being pretty cool as this one as an alternative Dynamax option, and then Urshifu was good versus Trick Room and stuff. It was a pretty good team overall. I didn't have Marco Fierro's paste. I later found out that he actually streamed this, and so I did copy a couple of his spreads over. One of them being the Landorus-T spread. I think everything else was original to me. I had my Thundurus. I know he used a Thundurus that was very slow and had a lot of bulk, whereas my Thundurus outsped Urshifu, which I thought was a pretty big problem for this team, because Urshifu could hit the Landorus and Thundurus for heavy damage. I had Figgy instead of Shuka. I had Burning Jealousy because I thought Lando was a really big problem for this team. As I kept laddering with this team, though, it became more and more apparent that it wasn't the team for me. It relied a bunch on stat drops, which was a good thing. You could stat drop your opponent to death, but there are some Pokemon that you just fold to. This team has no matchup against Life Orb Defiant Thundurus. Now, granted, a lot more Thundurus were switching to be this bulkier variant, But Life Orb Defiant Thunderous just destroys this team. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to hope you don't play it. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing that can Oko it. You can put Kartana against it and then max and try to go for Steel Spikes just to get a bunch of defense boosts, and that's like your best play. You can also do Lando, max Rock, and try to, like, you can give this thing Scary Face if you want to. Give it +3 and then just hope that you do a Dynamax trade. But it's a really awful matchup, and I also didn't like fighting against other Lando. I didn't like fighting against their Shifu. There was a lot of things I didn't like about this team. So there was another team that I had looked at that also looked very promising as well. So this was made by BK. If I could find his team. Yep, he ended up getting top 16 at this tournament as well. And he was using a very cool team with Registeel. I thought that this was very, very cool with Iron Defense and Body Press. So it's kind of like Ferrothorn, but immediately one of the things that I liked about that was it has more defense. It has it doesn't have the grass typing as well, so it's much better versus Incineroar. And so I thought that was really cool. He also had safety goggles and support Spectrier, and this very much appealed to me. I had experience with support Spectrier because in Players Cup 2, I had gone 7-2 in that tournament with a support Spectrier. I had Bulldoze with Metagross, so I had Bulldoze over Taunt, I believe. I think this was Focus Sash on my team there, but I had some experience with bulky Spectrier. And so this very much appealed to me. I thought this was a really cool idea. It also had some other things that I think are very strong in a Dynamax meta. So Life Orb Landorus, I thought was very good because of my practice with Marco Fierro's team. I thought this was very strong. And I also think that having a Life Orb and Weakness policy on your two primary Dynamax Pokemon is the strongest way that you can play this format, because these are by far the two best items to have on your Dynamax Pokemon. So I thought that these were very strong overall. You have a good Pokemon in Regieleki, and then you have screen support as well. So this team was very cool. This team by BK. And again, this, I don't know if I said this before, but this is Bro Kappa. You might have known him by that name, or also by Lele. He goes by Lele as well, I believe, on Twitter. Genius player. I think he is an incredibly smart individual. Comes from singles, but is just a real student of the game. And I've used his teams at tournaments before, so this very much appealed to me as a potential option, since I tended to like the stuff that BK used. Other Italian players were also using this around the same time. You can see here in the VR circuit for Spring Series, this important tournament of some sort. I actually don't know too much about the Victory Road circuit, sorry guys, but I did notice that both Francesco Pero, this is, I'm pretty sure, a friend of BK, and then also Sanvi were using this. So two Italians using this. I didn't think Sanvi was using the same team that Francesco was using. Sanvi's team looked a little bit different. He had a couple different moves on it. He had like Scary Face on Grimmsnarl instead of Thunderwave. And he had, I think, Amnesia on Registeel. Amnesia on Registeel is so bad, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I saw both of these players deciding to bring this. Now, granted, they both lost pretty early. Francesco lost in the first round, and Sanvi lost in the second round here of his top 8. But nevertheless, it appealed to me. I thought this was nice a pick. We saw more people using this. It seemed to be picking up in popularity. So this is the team that I decided to practice with and I laddered with for quite a bit of time. So I had a few tweaks on there relative to some of the other stuff, but nothing too special. Most of this is probably similar to what the original team BK had used. I didn't have the original paste prior to regional qualifiers, so I didn't know exactly what he was running on his sets, but this is pretty close to what it ended up being, I think. And it also is pretty close to what it ended up being on my final version of the team. So my final version of the team actually had Clefairy instead of Grimmsnarl, and that was for a couple reasons. One, I didn't like Grimmsnarl's passiveness. Grimmsnarl really felt like it was, you sent it out, typically with Spectrier. It was really common to do like Grimmsnarl Spectrier lead, and then you have a max Pokemon in the back, and then either Registeel or another Pokemon, and then you can just break through after you've lowered their stats a bunch. But I didn't like Grimmsnarl itself as a Pokemon. It was just so passive. It's out in the field. It was set up bait for so many different Pokemon. it just wasn't a good mon, in my opinion, as a support Pokemon. It didn't do what I wanted it to do. And also, I was very weak to Colossal. Colossal was super tough for this team. So, normally how you'd beat Colossal with this sort of team was with Thunder Wave Grimmsnarl. So you could Thunder Wave the Dragapult, and then you would be able to knock it out with another one of your Pokemon before Colossal was able to set up. And if they do Urshifu stuff, you have options with Regieleki, things like that. So you have some options there. But Thunder Wave was a pivotal point. But I couldn't play with Thunder Wave because I thought this team was incredibly weak to opposing Landorus. Landorus in this team felt like basically you're just Landoing each other. Like, okay, who gets the Swords Dance first? Who gets the Max Airstreams first? Sort of thing is how the Lando matchup seemed to play a lot of times. So I wanted to have a little bit more flexibility there too. Reflect is just not... I want Scary Face for that. I also want Scary Face for Regieleki, so that way I could immediately drop its speed, but you couldn't have both Scary Face and Thunder Wave. I mean, you could, but you drop Spirit Break, and then Grimmsnarl really is useless in an open team sheet format. I didn't like Grimmsnarl as I kept playing with it, so I talked with Luke Cretale, who goes by Dog Online, a brilliant player from Australia, in my opinion, the best player from Australia, although there are certainly several other Australians who could vie for that title. I think Luke plays incredibly. He recommended to add a Clefairy over the Grimmsnarl. So by putting Clefairy over Grimmsnarl, that gives me a lot of different options. And notably, what it lets me do is it lets me do something similar to what Lyokos did. So Lyokos was the first place winner of the Smogon VGC Major, and his matchup versus Cole was very cool. What he would do is he would lead Clefairy and Regieleki, and he would do Helping Hand Max Rising Voltage, and that would knock out support Dragapult. It would just knock them out in one hit. And so you would have Clefairy Regieleki, you'd be able to knock out Dragapults, and you would be able to follow me away the Aqua Jet from Urshifu. So that let you punish both versions of the Cole lead very, very hard, and I thought that was very clever. Also around this time, again, based on the Victory Road tournament here, Marco won with his own version of Cole, which had Togekiss and Life Orb Dragapult over the standard support Dragapult and Life Orb Moltres at the time. I know other players were also using it, I believe like Soabe was, but Marco Fiera was definitely the player who popularized it, and I think most variants of Colossal that were brought to Players' Cup were based on Marco's team. So I thought that was an important team to consider, and because it was Life Orb Dragapult, that meant that all I needed was a modest Magnet Thunderbolt, a Max Thunderbolt, in order to knock that out with a Helping Hand. So I could afford to still keep Magnet. I didn't want to switch my Life Orb around on Lando. I really liked Life Orb on Lando, but it meant me I could basically do the same thing that he did versus Clef teams with Clef and Regieleki, and I thought that was very strong. So this is the basis for the adjustments that I made from the Grimmsnarl version to the Clefairy version of the team, and then most of the other changes that I made in between there were just optimizing some EVs and stuff like that. So generally speaking, the way you play this team, I'll go ahead and just show it here so you can kind of see things as we go along. Generally, the way you play this team is you can do Spectrier. You can do like Spectrier with Clefairy, and so you stat drop them a bunch. You use Clefairy to get Snarls and Will-O-Wisps off. You use the bulk that Spectrier provides in order to let Clefairy potentially get Stings off. And then you have Landorus, and then either Regieleki or Moltres in the back. And since you've weakened their board, you send in Lando, you get either a Swords Dance, or you can just go immediately for the Dynamax and start claiming stuff, since you've weakened their whole team. You can also boost the speed of Regieleki in order to make it boost the speed and the special defense of Regieleki in order to make it a potent Pokemon in the endgame. Another mode that you can do with this team is Regieleki and Spectrier, with two Pokemon in the back. Like I said, usually Dynamax Mon, and then either Registeel or the other Dynamax. Like you either run both Dynamax options in the back, or you run Registeel in the back. So that was one option of the team. You could also do Dynamax plus Clefairy, so you could do like Lando plus Clefairy, or you could do Regieleki plus Clefairy, or you can do Moltres plus Clefairy. And that gives you a lot of different options. You can do something like you can either follow me Swords Dance, or you can Helping Hand Max Move. You have both of those options available to you. Those are both pretty strong, so you have a lot of different variety with what you can do there. Clefairy was really cool for that. And then also, generally speaking, I was pretty flexible with my leads. I could lead pretty much whatever I wanted, except for Registeel. I didn't normally lead Registeel, although I did it a couple times. But usually Registeel lead is pretty hard to do. It's not, you usually can't just have Iron Defense turn 1 of the game and just body your opponent. Usually they're going to have some sort of check to Registeel that you want to remove before you try to start setting up with Registeel. But sometimes you could do that, and sometimes you could just lead Lando and Registeel and just immediately start giving Registeel boost. So those are some of the overall game plans that I had with this team. But let's go ahead and get into some of the specifics. So the first Pokemon I want to talk about is Spectrier. I brought Spectrier to 15 out of 27 games in the regional finals. Spectrier is a really, really nice support Pokemon. In some respects, it's even better than Clefairy, although I think Clefairy is a little bit more consistent with what it can do. But it has a lot of really cool things that it can do. Being Fake Out immune with Goggles Taunt is a really great way of trolling Trick Room. A lot of Trick Room teams, they have to have like either a actual Follow Me Pokemon, or they have to have a really fast Pokemon in order to stop Spectrier from blocking their Trick Room. This sort of tauntable thing, like they also have, they can use like Prankster Taunt to potentially get around that as well, but Spectrier is very good at shutting down opposing Trick Room. It's also great versus Sun with the safety goggles. My Spectrier will not faint to a Life Orb Venusaur's G-Max Vine Lash based on Leaf Storm, and then I can Snarl it back. And if they're just a regular Koba Venusaur, then I won't die to the G-Max Vine Lash plus the Vine Lash chip damage, so I can potentially get 2 Snarls off, things of that nature. It's pretty powerful in that respect. It also, with Will-O-Wisp, it's great at shutting down a lot of the different physical attackers that are relevant in the metagame. Some of the most important ones being like Lando, but also being able to Will-O-Wisp Glastrier is an important one. Being able to Will-O-Wisp Rillaboom is important. Also Urshifu to a degree, though you typically want to Shadow Ball the Urshifu, at least Urshifu Water. Urshifu Dark is, I mean, you can Will-O-Wisp that, but usually you don't want to stay in and mess around with that. Usually you just want to use your Clefairy to redirect its attack away. I didn't invest in offense at all, but its special attack is so high that even with this little bit of investment, Shadow Ball still does a ton of damage to stuff. It'll chip things, it'll do like 40 to Lando, it'll do like 80 to Cart. Well, not like AV Cart, but it'll do enough to Cart where I can just 2-hit KO. I'm pretty sure you can 2-hit KO AV Cart with Shadow Ball. Not if they max, but you know, all those different things I can Will-O-Wisp the card anyway. Otherwise, it's also max speed. Max speed is mostly just for other support Spectrier, just to make sure that I can outspeed them. A lot of the support Spectrier that are running around don't actually use max speed. I think there was a Japanese version of this team that was public at the time that had like 180 speed, something like that, so it was like around here. So I just wanted to be max speed to outspeed it for sure. I also, it's also nice to be able to have the speed tie option versus opposing Spectrier. Because, for example, if I lead like Spectrier Clefairy into Spectrier, winning a speed tie with Snarl is pretty nice. It means that my Clefairy takes a lot less damage, so it can be relevant for that kind of situation. And also, a lot of Spectrier were running Modest. Like offensive Spectrier, we're running Modest, so running Timid Max Special Attack just guarantees that I'm faster than all that stuff. And I have the potential speed tie option. Funnily enough, I think in the tournament itself, the only time I did speed tie another Spectrier was in Trick Room, and so I actually wanted to be slower, but that's neither here nor there. Its extra speed was very useful in outspeeding others. I did play against other Spectrier and Dragapult that I actually outsped in the tournament, so being able to be faster than those Pokemon was important, and I definitely appreciated Spectrier having so much speed. With regards to its bulk, I talked a little bit about the Venusaur's rolls versus it. Like I said, I survived Life Orb, Max Vine Lash from it, and I'll survive regular Max Vine Lash as well as the Vine Lash chip damage afterwards. That's really important. I lived Specs Aleki T-Bolt 15/16 of the time. That's another really important one. So that means most Aleki can't just knock out my Spectre in one hit. They either have to Dynamax or they have to be like Modest with Thunderbolts, and even then that's still a roll. And if they're Specs Aleki, that's usually a little bit better for me because that frees up my Lando. usually the worst Eleki to fight against for this team is like Life Orb Eleki, because they have Hyper Beam. But if they're just like Specs Eleki with 4 electric attacks, that's not so bad. And I survive the timid ones anyway. And most Specs Eleki are timid because they want to run Electro Ball. Other things that I survive Lumberry, Landos, Max Quaker, Fly. Not all of them. If they're max attack, then I can faint, but if they're not max attack, which most of the Swords Dance Lumberry variants are, then I should survive that attack. That's important because if they're Life Orb, I can burn them, and that's good versus them. But if they're not Life Orb, then they're Lumberry, so I can either burn them twice, or I will just survive the attack, and I can attack the other Pokemon, maybe Snarl the ally, taunt the Lando if I want to block the SD, and so like if I taunt the SD Lando and they decide to max, I will survive the attack, so potentially can be relevant with that. I also live a Life Orb Lando's attack with Spectrier, if I have Clefairy next to it, which is not very uncommon. Or if I, of course, have Intimidate, but I don't account too much for Intimidate in my matchups because Lando doesn't usually switch in and out very often with this team. It's definitely a dedicated to Maximon. I don't switch it out, or I don't switch it in and out very often unless I'm pretty confident about what I'm doing. And then finally, the extra defense also lets it increase the odds that Glastrier's Max Ice won't knock out my Spectrier. It's not a good rule. It will do about 25. It has a 75% chance to live against the Lyakos Glastrier, if I recall correctly. I think Lyakos was running 196 plus. Yep. And then they had a little bit of speed. If other Glastrier were also running like a little bit of bulk, then, like I say, my Spectrier lives this 75% of the time, which isn't good. But I wanted to make sure I lived like that Specs Lucky roll. And also ensuring that I had max speed meant that I had to cut back somewhere, and so it ended up being the thing that cut back was from defense. So I still survive the attack most of the time, and of course, with safety goggles, the hail damage won't pick me up afterwards, so they do actually have to KO me. And this is relevant, this does come up, like for example, if I lead Spectrier into Clef, Glastrier stuff, I can taunt the Clef turn 1, survive the max ice, and then Will-O-Wisp the Glastrier turn 2 if I need to. So that's one potential option that I have, but that's Spectrier. The next Pokemon I have is Landorus, and Landorus is my primary Dynamax option. It was brought to 17 out of 27 of my games. All of Landorus, Regieleki, and Moltres can max. Spectrier can max in theory with Clefairy. Like if you're in a really good spot, you can max Shadow Ball and kill stuff with Clefairy, but it's usually not very often that you do that. Usually Lando is the Pokemon that I want to Dynamax mostly. Like I mentioned before, I have the pressure of both Follow Me Swords Dance and also Helping Hand attack. So Landorus is very strong with respect to that. Even without Clefairy support, it's pretty strong. Being able to get speed boosts on my other Pokemon is a really, really good component, and I think Max Airstream is the most powerful G-Max move, or the most powerful Max move for sure. It's debatable whether or not it's powerful than the G-Max chip moves, but it's definitely the most powerful Max move. And it is so powerful being able to put yourself faster than your opponents by attacking and boosting your ally speed at the same time. I almost always bring Landorus versus other Landorus. This team is generally, I think, pretty weak to Landorus. I've got the Will-O-Wisp on Spectrier, but like Lando is good versus Regieleki. Lando will outspeed Moltres if they're running a normal Lando. Clefairy helps versus Lando, but is not particularly great. And Registeel can beat Lando, but you need an Iron Defense up first, so pretty much always bring my Landorus into other Landorus. I try to get the advantage with the Intimidates. Another thing that's important to keep in mind with this team is usually it's sometimes not worth going for the Swords Dance trade. So like, for example, if you lead Lando into Lando, it's usually better to actually Airstream their Lando rather than going for Swords Dance trades, because you putting damage on their Lando matters a lot more usually than getting the +1 trade. Usually you'd prefer just to hit them and lose the potential Dynamax trade than for them to actually get the +1 on their Lando. So Landorus is a key component in dealing with other Landorus, thanks to its Intimidate and thanks to the insane amount of damage it can do with Max Fly. I had a little bit of bulk on this Lando. You notice I have 36 special defense CVs. This is actually not because I want Lando to survive any particular special attack. It's actually because, so I can allow Landorus plus Clefairy. If I lead those two into a Porygon 2, it guarantees that the Porygon 2 gets an attack boost and not a special attack boost. And that's actually pretty relevant for a number of things. For example, Lando Clef into P2 and then plus something that can just knock out my Clefairy immediately. Like, say, for example, a Metagross or maybe like a Spectrier or something of that nature. That means that my Lando won't just immediately go down, which is very nice. I also have different plays where I can go for, say, like Follow Me, Swords Dance. They set Trick Room, and then I can more comfortably do something like potentially Protect Clefairy and max Ground into the P2. Because since they only have the attack boost and not special attack boost, with Friend Guard, the Ice Beams are going to do under half to a maxed Lando, so I can take those attacks a lot better. So that download goal was pretty important to me, and so I had to invest some special defense in there. This was a really awkward thing to EV, because Clefairy wants certain goals that it needs to hit, and my Landorus needs to meet those goals too. I want to reduce my special defense investment as much as I can, since it doesn't do anything outside of this goal. And this is what I ended up settling on. I also needed some HP on my Landorus. This Landorus is able to survive a +1 max Airstream from opposing Life Orb Landorus. If it is, like I say, if it's +1, I'm able to survive that attack, and then also I'm going to be able to survive my follow-up Life Orb recoil. So if I do end up in that situation where the Lando does have a +1 attack boost, I can nevertheless still go for, like, for example, I can potentially Helping Hand max Airstream them back, and then maybe win another speed tie. Being able to survive that attack with certainty is really important. And with Clefairy, it makes it a little bit, it's obviously better. You can take that attack even better, but that max fly roll plus Life Orb is without accounting for Clefairy, so I'm not accounting for Clefairy being on the field at the same time. And that's nice because it means my Lando is guaranteed to live a hit, and I can hit them back, which ends up mattering a lot because, like I said, my Lando is very good versus opposing Landorus, but the same thing is vice versa, so I need to be able to survive that attack. The HP as well also allows me to survive a Surging Strikes plus Aqua Jet plus Life Orb recoil from Urshifu if the Urshifu is intimidated. So, like, for example, if I switch in Lando against Urshifu, I max flying, they go for Surging Strikes, that won't kill Lando. I go for max flying, bring them down to Sash, they go for Aqua Jet, I will live, I use another max Airstream, and then my Lando will die, but at least I killed the Urshifu. It's usually not a good thing for Lando to take a Surging Strikes. I don't want Lando to take a Surging Strikes if I can help it. So this goal is not as important as other goals could be, but it allows me at least to win the 1v1 versus Urshifu when it comes down to it. But yeah, that's an important thing there. Another important thing is making sure that I'm max speed Adamant. This is relevant for a couple things. I could go Jolly, but going Jolly forces me to pick something awkward. I can't run max speed Jolly and max speed attack while also having that download goal against Porygon 2. Now, I could give that up, but I really liked that. I really liked how that allowed me to play versus Porygon 2. So I would have had to cut back speed somewhere. I would have had to cut back speed, like maybe just outspeed like Togekiss or something like that. It was Togekiss 145, so I had to cut back to just like this. And then I would need, like I say, I'd need to manipulate my other bulk somehow. I'd be losing a decent bit of attack by doing this. So I went with Adamant, just max my speed out. And I have a little bit more attack than most Life Orb Landorus. Most Life Orb Landorus, they just are lazy, and they go down to like 116 plus because that's nice and even, so they get like 2 points. Whereas the other ones would only get 1 point. That doesn't actually matter for anything, by the way. So I have a little bit of extra attack. This is nice for things like, for example, Helping Hand, Landorus versus Dragapult. After Life Orb Recoil, I KO that sort of Dragapult 7/8 of the time. You have a few less rolls to be able to do that. Max Rock Slide into Thundurus is a better roll after sand damage. Things of that nature. The extra attack doesn't matter so much. It's mostly just I don't want it anywhere else. I don't need it. Like I said, I don't even need the special defense bulk in theory. But I need it with Clefairy in order to guarantee that the Porygon 2 gets a download special attack boost. And if you're not sure how download actually works as to why I would want to do it that way, I will link up in the top right or wherever it's at to my download mechanics video if you want to understand why I decided to do it that way. But yeah, that's Landorus. Like I say, Landorus is the thing I like to Dynamax the most. Lando is cool. Next thing I'll talk about is my Registeel. So I brought Registeel to 20 out of my 27 games in the regional qualifiers. It's an excellent wins condition Pokemon. Like I mentioned before, I think it's a lot better than Ferrothorn. It has a lot higher defense than Ferrothorn. It has a lot higher special events than Ferrothorn. And it has a much better Incineroar matchup. Not only because of its higher stats, but also because of its extra speed. So I'm able to... It's very common for me to put an Airstream boost onto my Registeel, and that allows me to speed Incineroars. I think I outspeed up to 109 speed Incineroar, like the stat, which is like near max investment. Like without going jolly, it's near max investment. So no Incineroar is going to be running that fast. A lot of Incineroar run around like the 91 speed range because then you can outspeed max speed Timidamungus. And so you see Incineroars run up and down that area. But you normally don't see anybody going like, if 91 is like the average Incineroar speed, you don't see anybody running up to 109. So felt pretty confident my Registeel was going to be outspeeding those Incineroars at +1. It also can outspeed other stuff at +2 as well, because it has 73 speed. 73 times 2 is 146, which means I will be faster than Togekiss at +2, which is nice because I have Heavy Slam. And it also outspeeds Mamoswine at +2, and that's very nice because Mamoswine is actually kind of a problem for this team. It's one of those things that just happens to be very good versus me. So, being able to have a little bit of extra speed in order to outspeed those Pokemon is nice. And then you outspeed Registeels that don't understand the max Airstream play, and like they have nothing. So you outspeed those, which is nice. Clear Body is also nice to be able to block stat drops. You can't get Phantasm dropped. If you get a speed boost from max Airstream, you can't be Electro Web dropped. Things like that. It's a nice ability. I also can't be intimidated, which is nice for Heavy Slam. Because, like I said, I've got Heavy Slam on here. Heavy Slam is really good, in my opinion, on Registeel. You have a couple other options instead of Heavy Slam. You could run Amnesia. Amnesia is a terrible move, in my opinion, because Amnesia doesn't let you hit Ghost types. That's a really big problem. You can't hit, like, Dragapult. You can't hit Dusclops. Mimikyu is also something that exists. You need to consider that. Now, Heavy Slam obviously doesn't do very much damage to each of those Pokemon, but it does about, like a third to Dragapult. It will do some damage to Dusclops. And that's really all I needed to do. I just needed to do some damage. And that's better than the alternative of Flash Cannon, because Flash Cannon is very weak. Flash Cannon only has 80 base power, right? Yeah, it only has 80 base power. That's coming off of 75 base special attack. That's really weak. But Heavy Slam is much stronger versus a lot of neutral targets. So I can use Heavy Slam into Togekiss, and if they're the standard, like, Scope Lens Togekiss, like just max HP and no extra bulk, it does about 60% minimum. So Heavy Slam is very, very likely to 2-hit KO Togekiss that I fight against. And it also will do more damage than Body Press would at +2 to things like Amoonguss or Tapu Fini, just to give a couple examples. There's another option that you can run here that I think is worth considering. I think Sand Tomb is a really good option. It allows you to beat things like Dusclops more reliably. Sand Tomb has the effect of trapping the opponent in. That's a really cool side effect that Sand Tomb has that Heavy Slam obviously doesn't. You can lock down a slot on the field and then it can't switch out, and that can be pretty useful. It also deals damage for 4 to 5 turns. It's only 1/8 of the opponent's health, rather than like 1/6 like G-Max chip damage, but 1/8 isn't too bad. If they're out in the field for the full Sand Tomb duration, they'll take half their HP. And so Sand Tomb can be nice to whittle away things like Tapu Fini much faster than Heavy Slam does. But I really liked Heavy Slam, in particular because against Colossal stuff, I would bring Registeel. And you could often end up in situations, for example, where your opponent has Togekiss plus Urshifu. And if they have both Togekiss and Urshifu, then they can just redirect your Body Presses forever. Body Press doesn't do anything to Togekiss because it quad resists it. But Heavy Slam knocks it out in 2 hits. So it prevents your opponent from setting up those Togekiss or Urshifu endgames so easily. They can't just like troll you with that. They've got to actually think with Heavy Slam as the additional move on Registeel. I definitely clicked Heavy Slam a lot with Registeel. Amnesia is a terrible move. Amnesia never wins anybody any games. I watched so many Amnesia Registeels prior to the regional qualifiers, practicing against Amnesia Registeels, and then also watching players during Players' Cup, like watching them like in between the regional qualifiers and the regional qualifier cup cut, and then also before global finals. I watched a lot of Amnesia Registeels. It doesn't do anything. Nobody should be using Amnesia. Amnesia does literally nothing. I try to find a replay where Amnesia actually wins you a game. I swear, you cannot find one. But yeah, that's enough about the filler move on Registeel. As far as the EVs go, I know some people run max defense on Registeel. They'll do something like this. I don't think this is necessary. I don't really see... I don't know what calcs you hit with this that you don't otherwise. I did a lot of calcing with Registeel, and I couldn't really find anything where I need max defense. So I settled on 196. I thought this was a pretty good benchmark. What this allows me to do is I can Oko a Porygon 2. If the Porygon 2 is EV'd to be 3 KO'd by Life Orb, Dragapult, Bax Dragon Darts, then I can Oko that Porygon 2 with a +4 body press. And now you might think, well, that's just such a hyper-specific thing, but that would cover most Porygon 2s, I think, how they generally EV. A lot of Porygon 2s EV to be modest anymore, and so I thought this was a little bit more than I even needed to do against Porygon 2. And so that's a nice benchmark to have. It also does things like it will, against Incineroars, this KOs 252 HP, 140 defense Incineroar cleanly. Most Incineroars don't run that much defense. They typically are running like Careful Nature, and then they'll have a lot of speed to be able to outspeed a Moongus. Like I say, they're running around that 91 speed area, so they can't afford to run that much defense. And so I don't think I played against any Incineroar that lived a +2 body press in either practice or in the tournament itself. So I pretty cleanly knock out Incineroars. And then finally, because I'm not forcing myself to invest in defense first, that means I also have extra special defense, which allows me to do things like, for example, Modest, Regieleki's Magnet Thunderbolt is a 3-hit KO on me, and that's without even protecting. So, like, for example, a Thunderbolt into a Thunderbolt won't knock me out because of my Leftovers recovery. And that's pretty nice. I'm able to more reliably attack into the Regieleki in that kind of situation. And then just having general special, the bulk is fine. I didn't feel like I needed it anywhere else. Max HP is, like, I didn't need, because I didn't need any more defense, because, like, I could do something like this. I can just run, like, drop all this and dump it in defense. But I didn't need this. I couldn't find anything between here and here that I thought was relevant. And so I just cut back to this. I thought this was good. And then, of course, the 4 attack is just because it's left over. It doesn't do anything in particular. So that's Registeel. Registeel's a cool Pokemon. I like Registeel. It also is, it like is un. It's like that kind of thing. So I like Registeel. Next Pokemon is Clefairy. And Clefairy, ended up exceeding expectations for me. So when I used Grimmsnarl, Grimmsnarl was a good Pokemon, but Clefairy is a really good Pokemon. And I think it's because being able to redirect away max moves is honestly such a big deal. So Clefairy almost always does something. With Follow Me, you almost always do something because every opponent is going to Dynamax one of their Pokemon. And once you Dynamax, you only have single target moves. And Clefairy is able to take away those single target attacks from your ally. And I think that's a huge deal. So Clefairy is very strong in that respect. I brought Clefairy to literally all of my games in Players' Cup 3, which is honestly surprising to me when I ran those statistics. I brought it to literally every single game because of how good it is as a glue Pokemon, being able to put stuff together. Yeah, I brought it to all 27 of my games, which is insane to me. Follow Me, helping him protect our standard. If you've ever seen Clefairy before, these should be standard moves that you see on there. Sing is the only debatable filler option. I think most players would agree that Sing is like the quote best move on Clefairy. There are other options that I see. One of them is Moonblast. Moonblast is a terrible option. It hits Urshifu a little bit harder. So what? It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter that you can hit Urshifu. ally switch as a move I've seen, because they're like, ho, what if I want to protect my Clefairy, but I already used protect? Then I can use ally switch and make my opponent take any damage. Except that's not what Clefairy is used for. Clefairy is used for having people attack it, not the other way around. So ally switch is a bad move too. Icy Wind is actually a good move, in my opinion. So Icy Wind is nice because it allows you to pressure Lando on switching, and it allows you to break sashes, which is what Moonblast is good for. You can break the sash on things like Urshifu, and the speed drop matters way more than doing like 60% to Urshifu. I don't care about doing 60% to Urshifu. I care a lot more about lowering its speed. So Icy Wind is a really good option for that. And then, like I say, hitting Lando for a little bit of damage. It does like about a third to Lando. It's not 0 damage. I think Lando is the best Pokemon in the format, so hitting that for some good damage is nice. But I think ultimately Sing is the best option because Sing lets you do a lot of annoying stuff with Clefairy. If your opponent leads something that is passive, then you can just click Sing over and over and over again. Like if your opponent, say, has Trick Room, and they say they have like Follow Me plus Trick Room, so they have like Togekiss plus like Dusclops or something. I can taunt them, but that takes a couple turns to do. But I can just click Sing for a while. Like I can just click and Sing, and if I hit, that's great for me. You're gonna be in trouble if I hit a lot of Sings. And Sing is 55% accurate, so technically it is hacks if I miss it, which is something honestly to keep in mind. The fact that Clefairy has the probable Sing is really good. Have you ever used Air Slash before with your Togekiss with the intent of flinching your opponent? Have you ever done that? Because that is exactly the same odds. Well, it's actually not exactly the same, but it's pretty much the same odds as an Air Slash flinching the opponent. Except putting your opponent to sleep is way better. If you get a Sing off on a Dynamax Mon, you sometimes just win the game. So Sing is a really nice option. It lets me push advantage further. Clefairy has a lot of free turns. Clefairy often has a ton of turns where I don't need a helping hand because I already would do enough damage into that slot. I don't need to Follow Me because my ally isn't under any pressure, and it doesn't matter if Clefairy or the ally takes damage. So Sing is the best option to click if I have nothing better to do. And I ended up in a lot of circumstances in my Players' Cup run where Clefairy had nothing better to do than click Sing, and it hit Sing a lot. Sing also was probably the best option for me because I was very lucky with it. I'm sure if I had missed all my Sings, I would have said, oh, Sing is a terrible move. Sing sucks. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter if it's the best move to click or not. If it never hits, then it's not good. But yeah, it's pretty nice for that. But yeah, that's enough about Sing. As far as the EVs go, like I said, the spread was constructed in mind with Landorus in order to ensure the Porygon 2 gets an attack boost from download. And so, as far as the physical defense side goes, I really want Clefairy to survive more physical hits than I do special hits. The physical hits matter a lot more to me on Clefairy than the special hits do. So this Clefairy is able to survive max attack, Glastriers, max heavy slam, 15/16 of the time. So not Life Orb, but like Lumberry if they're like 252 attack or something like that. So I'm able to live that sort of Glastrier 15/16 of the time, which is good. I'm able to live opposing Life Orb Landorus, max fly. I'm able to live that 100% of the time. I'm able to live Life Orb Venusaur Sludge Bomb 100% of the time. There's other things you can do with that, but those are some of the most irrelevant ones. If it wasn't for the download goal, I would have ran Clefairy with a lot more physical bulk. I would have probably ran something like this with, not like this, I probably would have ran like this. Because that allows you to take Surging Strikes much better from Clefairy. It significantly increases the odds that Surging Strikes will be a 3-8 KO rather than a 2-8 KO. As it is with this Clefairy, it is a very likely 2-8 KO, which is not good. It's definitely annoying. And then finally, one minor optimization is that I ran Careful with 31 attack IVs rather than running like Calm with 0 attack IVs, because I didn't care whether or not Clefairy took foul play damage. If it hits itself in Confusion and does 2 more damage to itself, so what? It was actually way more common for my Clefairy, while taunted, to have to use Struggle. And so I just decided to run Careful with 31 as just a minor optimization there. Not a huge deal. It's not like Clefairy is going to be doing big boy damage with his struggle, but there are situations where I would stay in with Clefairy because I need the friend guard on my ally. Like if I led Lando Clef and they taunt me turn 1, sometimes it's better for me to stay in with Clefairy so that way I can have the extra friend guard support. So if I'm going to stay in, I might as well have struggle do 2 more damage compared to taking foul play and doing 2 less damage. That was a little bit more relevant for me. Or like Pelipper hurricaning you and you get confused or whatever, things like that. So the next Pokemon is Regieleki. I brought Regieleki to a lot of games as well. Same bring rate as Registeel, 20 out of 27 games. So in most of my games, I brought my Regieleki. Like I said, it used to be Sash, but I switched to Magnet because I don't like losing the Eleki speed ties. There's no point in leading like Eleki into other Eleki on this team because the only thing that I can outspeed with other, like, the only thing Electro Web into other Eleki going first does is let my Spectrier outspeed it and go for Shadow Ball, which doesn't even kill it. So it's not a particularly relevant goal. So I didn't feel like I needed max speed on Regieleki. There is one goal that is very nice to hit with additional speed on this thing. It'd be outspeeding your Urshifu at +1. That happens every so often. But for the most part, Regieleki is fine without running max speed. Outside of that Urshifu, outside that +1 Urshifu thing and opposing Regieleki, you don't need the extra special attack for anything else. Everything else is fine. And the advantage of running this sort of spread is that you have a lot more bulk. So I'm able to survive opposing Rillaboom's Grassy Glide with the Miracle Seed. I'm able to survive that 100% of the time. I'm able to survive Surging Strikes 100% of the time. I'm able to survive Wicked Blow 100% of the time. I'm able to survive Helping Hand Glastrier's Max Quake with Friend Guard if I Dynamax 100% of the time. I actually live that pretty comfortably too. So Regieleki with the additional bulk is really nice, especially when paired with Clefairy, which it occasionally came up with. I didn't normally lead Clefairy Regieleki and try to max my Regieleki. Like I said, Landorus was my typical max that I like to bring to games, but the combination of these two is very powerful. And if I didn't see like a Lando, then these two were, or if I didn't see a ground type in general, these two were in contention for use as a Dynamax option. So Regieleki is very strong. I decided to buff its strength as much as possible with giving it max special attack. Didn't need to cut back for any reason. Lycos ran 236 on their Regieleki. I don't know why they did that. You don't need to do that. You can just fiddle with your defense EVs a little bit more, and then you can run max special attack. So I don't know why in particular they ran 236, but I didn't need to do that. I could just afford to run max special attack, and then, like I say, cut the bulk there is fine. I don't really care about any special bulk that Regieleki has, so this is just like optimized with respect to, I think, Wicked Blow, because that was the strongest out of the Grassy Glide, Surging Strikes, and Wicked Blow. Wicked Blow is the strongest of those 3. So I just optimized with respect to that, and then the special attack dump. The speed is 1 point over Lycos's Regieleki. That was honestly probably a dumb idea. There's nobody else running. First of all, I didn't play anybody running this team. I think anybody running this team also would speed creep their own Regieleki, so going +1 over it really doesn't matter. I probably should have just dropped some of the speed and put it more into bulk because I didn't need 36. 28 would have been fine. But that's the play I decided to make. Regieleki is a nice Pokemon. Being a fast option, I can outspeed everything in the format and get powerful Thunderbolts or Electro Webs off to support my allies. I can do quick Volt Switch, things of that nature. You probably know what a Regieleki does if you played it in Series 9. My last Pokemon was Moltres, and Moltres was also my least brought Pokemon. It was only brought to 9 out of 27 games, so it had the lowest bring rate out of all my Pokemon. All my other Pokemon were brought to at least half of my games, but Moltres was brought significantly less than any of my other Pokemon. Moltres was definitely the odd man out on this team, and I think it's because as an alternate max, I think Lando Clefairy is a little bit better than Clefairy Moltres because Lando has the immediate option of Helping Hand max move, and it's a little bit stronger because of its Life Orb, whereas the Helping Hand max move from Moltres isn't quite as strong. But still, Moltres itself is a very good Pokemon. It's very nice versus Grimmsnarl stuff in particular, because a lot of Grimmsnarl stuff, they just can't do anything to you. If they want to Spirit Break you, that's fine. You're going to get a boost off of them attempting to Spirit Break you, so you're going to gain special attack instead of losing special attack, and they typically don't have any other move to touch you with, so... Moltres is very nice versus Grimmsnarl stuff in particular. I like bringing it versus that. Being an EQ partner was nice, but usually irrelevant, because usually if I brought both Lando and Moltres, I typically max the Lando. So I'd like max Lando, then maybe Nasty Plot with Moltres and go for Fiery Wraths rather than maxing Moltres and going for Earthquakes, but it could come up depending on the particular board state. Hurricane was actually kind of an accident with my Moltres. I originally intended to do Air Slash, and I had done all my practice with Air Slash. But the night of the tournament, as I was preparing my Pokemon, I had given Moltres Hurricane accidentally, and I locked it in on Arcanine Labs with Hurricane, and I saved with Hurricane. I didn't notice that I actually had Hurricane until the next day, in round 5, which is the first time I had brought Moltres. And I noticed I had Hurricane. I'm like, oh no! I felt so bad because I didn't know that I was the wrong move, and so I was like, I'm gonna have to give my opponent the win here because they're my team sheet's wrong, so I need to lose my Moltres, and that's gonna suck because that just isn't what I want to. That's not how I want to go out. I don't want to lose one of my Pokemon. But it happened to be Hurricane on both Arcanine and in game, so I was never in violation of anything. But I was just caught off guard because I didn't double check my moves, and for some reason I had given it Hurricane rather than Air Slash when I was preparing my team, putting the final touches on the night before. So that was pretty embarrassing. But yeah, beyond the Hurricane thing, it's one of the nice things about weakness policy Moltres, and especially about the opponent knowing that's weakness policy Moltres, is that they never attack you with super effective moves. It's so interesting. If you lead Clefairy and Moltres, your opponent will never attack you with a super effective attack. They will never do it. Literally never, because they want to cover the Clefairy using Follow Me, and they also need to cover me just using like Protect Clefairy and maxing the Moltres, and then all of a sudden they use their weak attack. Like say they have a Finny Moonblast and they Moonblast my Moltres. They're never going to do that. They're always going to call mine, which means you always get a Nasty Plot. And I swear, this is like all the time. Like you can watch any live weakness policy Moltres games. Watch any weakness policy Moltres games. They never attack with a super effective move. They never do. It's everybody plays the exact same way. I play the exact same way into it. So I know if I do that, then other people are inclined to too. So yeah, that's one nice thing about Moltres is that people won't actually attack you, but you have to make sure you use that advantage effectively. The spread is pretty basic. With 139 speed, I outspeed opposing Timid Regieleki at +2. That's not usually too often to happen. I would have to +2 over the Regieleki, while the Regieleki is not on the field for that to happen, but it can happen. It can come up. It also outspeeds modest Rotom forms out of Dynamax, or well, I guess in Dynamax too, but it outspeeds modest Rotom forms, which is nice. The special attack was mostly just what I was comfortable with. I was originally running this spread. I was originally running this. Well, I was running like this rather. I was running like this because this hits the bump, and that's usually a nice way to start off your EVing. Just EV around there. I couldn't find anything that was relevant. I was comfortable with the special attack, so I remember I just dropped 1 point of HP for this because 180 is a Gmax chip damage number, and so I just went underneath that. I didn't have any particular goals with it. It was a pretty lazy spread. Probably contributes as well to like the fact that Moltres was probably my least used Pokemon in both practice and definitely in the tournament. Probably contributed to why my EV'd it so lazily, because I didn't really know what particular goals I need my Moltres to hit, so I just picked really generic ones, having some bulk, some special attack, which is not very specific. But yep, that's all for this team. I will be uploading after this video a number of battles with commentary. I will be uploading those as the days go on. I'll be recording some commentary and editing them over my videos, over my battle videos. I recorded all my games. That is the one nice thing about these online tournaments. You can record all your matches, and so you can go back and watch them and reflect on them. And I think that's useful for growing as a player. So I will be taking advantage of that and uploading those sets to YouTube. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, have a good one.